Hello and welcome to episode 55 of the Garden Log. My name is Ben Dark and I am a gardener, and this week I am talking about gardening. More specifically, I am talking about moving snowdrops in the green. I am talking about quince trees, and I'm talking about wantonly risky unwrapping of tender plants. I'm recording this in a period of stillness. This is a Sunday afternoon, as you might be able to tell from my voice, and is the first period of still in what seems like forever. I'm so used to a mad thrashing of tree limbs out beyond the window pane that this almost feels unnaturally still, as if the world had become a painting, and I the only living element in it. I'm sure the winds will return fairly soon. After all, we are in March, which tends to be one of the windier months. It's the old in like a lion, leaves like a lamb. We all know how windy lions are. I'm also giving a recommendation this week, which will be of interest to anyone looking for insight into how one of Britain's most prestigious gardens conducts itself. The podcast will be a tiny bit shorter than normal, for reasons which will become abundantly clear when we listen to The Week in Gardening. Welcome to The Week in Gardening, a week that began on a Tuesday. I decided that I would do away with Monday as a day of labour altogether and start the week a little bit later with an extended weekend. It's probably not best for the garden, but sometimes it's best for the gardener. And that is a theme that continued on Tuesday morning. I was going against science in favour of practicality and ease. And those of you who are very clued into the horticultural calendar and the perennial horticultural debates will know that I've just been alluding to snowdrops. I've been alluding to the fact that on Tuesday morning I was moving snowdrops in the green. And moving snowdrops in the green is a term used when you dig up a snowdrop and move it to a new place which has a certain paucity of snowdrops, and you do it when the leaves are sticking out of the ground and the flowers have just finished. This is opposed to moving snowdrops when they are dormant, when they have taken their little rootlets back into themselves, those wonderfully fragile little things, and when they have drawn the energy from those long strappy leaves back into their little onion-like bulb, and when they're all sitting there cosy and snug in the summer soil, you dig them up and they don't notice it. It's like they have been carried as a sleeping child might be carried from car seat to bed without noticing it. The snowdrop has similarly been transported. When you do it in the green, it is far more traumatic for your hypothetical snowdrop child. It's like you have yanked them out of their school in the middle of a PE lesson and driven them to another school and said, right, you go here now. And you've kicked them into a science class where they know no one and they're still wearing their PE kit. And of course they're going to sulk for a little bit and they probably won't get any grades at all in that science class that year. Anyway, that's what I've done to the snowdrops. I've dug them all up while they were not expecting it, while their roots were still in the ground, and moved them to a part of the garden where we needed more snowdrops. And the reason I've done it this way, rather than the scientific way, is for pure practicality. At the moment, I can see where my snowdrops are. I don't need to remember where the clumps are come summer. and I can see where the other bulbs are. All the daffodils are up, the tulips are up, the scilla, the chinodoxa, the crocuses, all of them are there. So when I replant, I don't have to worry about that wonderful feeling you get when a trowel goes from resistant soil into soft bulb flesh. It's also quite good transporting them in the green because it's still very fresh in your mind which areas looked awful in January and February, which areas needed lightening with a little mist of snowdrops. In the midsummer, everything's been covered with a wonderful herbaceous flop. There are leaves and stems and flowers everywhere, and suddenly it's very hard to think of those stark days of winter when the snowdrops were really, really working hard for the garden and the gardener. So I like to do my snowdrop transporting now. What I do is I dig up the whole clump and split it into little clumplets. I don't split it into individual bulbs because, as I've mentioned before on previous podcasts, a single snowdrop with 2 little leaves and 1 little pearlescent lampshade of flower doesn't do much for me. I want a semi-drift from the beginning. So I split into little clumplets, dig a hole for them, stick them in, and firm the soil down around it. If there's a hole been left behind, you fill that in with a bit of compost and go about your business. I tend to use snowdrops as accessories to other features in the garden. I think a clump of snowdrops in the middle of a very big flat field can look a bit lost and almost a little bit like litter. But when they are near something else, be it a hedge or a tree, a bare tree, something bigger, then they work. They give a little extra element between soil and tree or hedge or anything really. Where I find them particularly useful when they've finished flowering is in a field, in a rough field where you're growing big daffodils up to 30 centimetres say. And it can look a bit strange having this grass layer at 6 centimetres and then strappy stalks up to 30 centimetres and then a couple of big yellow flower heads. You need a middle ground. You need something at 15 centimetres. And the snowdrop leaf accomplishes this perfectly. And also the leaf is a beautiful thing. I noticed it on Tuesday morning. We came in, it was quite a wet morning. There had been rain overnight, and there was lots more rain to come, but more of that later. There'd been rain overnight, and the rain sits on a snowdrop leaf beautifully. Snowdrop leaves are not a bright green. There's a steelier, bluer edge to them, but they hold water drops in lines along their stems. Not when they're young, not when they have yet to flower. Then the leaves go straight up. Once they've flowered, the leaves tend to arch out a bit more. They flop over, and that's when they get this wonderful silvery early morning dew or rain sheen to them. So when you move your snowdrops around in a clump, think not only of the flowers, but what the leaves will do. I moved quite a few into the daffodil patches where they could be a foliage effect, and where they would also bring some wonderful white flowers. And that was a very satisfying morning, but it was only the morning, because we were driven off by incredible rain. It came down in apocalyptic sheets. The way the rain was travelling felt like they had come 30 miles horizontally to slam into our faces. There was no vertical action, no gravity acting on these raindrops, just wind. But obviously they must have come from higher up, because they brought the most almighty temperature drop with them. The rain started and it sucked all the heat out of the atmosphere. I went back at the end of the week and looked at the temperature charts for the week gone, and I saw that around midday on Tuesday we dropped from 8 degrees Celsius to 2 degrees Celsius, which is incredible. Normally you only get that sort of temperature drop when clouds clear in the night time and all of the day's heat gets sucked away. It was very satisfying as well because it was unequivocal rain. It was the kind of rain that forces you to pack up and clear off. Sometimes you can dither and hang around in the dripping eaves of a building, taking shelter, lurking under cedar trees, thinking, well, if it stops in 10 minutes, I'll go back to whatever I was doing. This was very much evacuate the garden, go on to look at seed catalogues and shopping lists. And I was very lucky that I did look at shopping lists, because the next day, on Wednesday morning, we went out on a trip to the local wholesale nursery, who were having their annual local landscaping contractors open day and lunch. It was a little glass of red wine and a pork pie and a chance to see all of the shady characters who work in the horticultural industry in the locality. They also had a good generous discount on the already discounted trade prices. So I bought a quince tree. That's very exciting. Never grown quince before, but on my extended weekend I had the most wonderful quince jelly with a lovely bit of blue cheese. It's really just jam and quince jelly, but jam and cheese is a very good combination. And I had this lovely quince jelly and thought, well, we need a quince tree for the orchard. So I picked up one of those, half standard, and I'm going to stick that in. They're self-fertile quince trees, so I didn't need to worry about finding a pollinator for it. I will just put it there and let it do its strange pear-like thing. It's quite a good companion. Now we'll have quince and medlar. It sort of completes the pseudo-apple part of the orchard. It was quite nice going down to the nursery. You get to drive through all of the countryside and the lanes and see what's going on with the wider trees. All of the cherries are just starting to come out. These poor little things chose the very worst of weeks for it. They chose the windiest, semi-hurricane-like week they could find. It's like that scene from the start of Saving Private Ryan, where they're attacking the Normandy beaches, and they open the gates on the amphibious vehicles, and all of these soldiers hop out into an immediate hail of machine gun fire. I think all the little florets of cherry blossom just peeked their way from the bud casing and immediately found this typhoon waiting to snatch them away. Anyway, hopefully there will be some blossom left at the end of this week, for days when we are better able to get out and enjoy them. The afternoon on Wednesday was spent doing general tidying jobs, cleaning up the sticks that were being thrown from the thrashing trees and putting them through shredders. That kind of business. Oh, also at the nursery I bought some birch trees. The classic silver birch, Betula utilis, Jackmontii, which will go in a little brackeny clearing in the wilder parts of the garden. And they're small at the moment, small little multi-stems, but hopefully they will grow over the next 15 or so years to be something glimpsed from a distance, some zebra striping to the woodland beyond. I think they're going to be quite nice. It'll be fun to get them in and almost forget about them. On Thursday, I was at university talking about the new perennial movement, that prairie-style echinacea grasses thing that looks fantastic on the covers of Gardens Illustrated, photographed at dawn from a low angle with some mist in the valley and a bit of dew on the grass blades. It's magazine editor's dream, and we're going through all the various manifestos and scientific treatises associated with this. They would be big, I think. A lot of the new perennial guys, particularly the ones up at Sheffield, they would advise us, no doubt, to move our snowdrops in the summer, for they are scientists. And they have charts and matrices, and they have optimum sowing rates. Really, really fantastic work. It's amazing to see what this movement that can be traced to the 19th century and goes through all of the arts and crafts people and those early American pioneers, and what weird ways it ends up. The differences between the Peterhoffs and the Sheffield schools, for example. It's great fun to have a romp through that kind of a subject. And on Friday, I think my brain had been worked enough, so it was time to do some more physical activity. And I busied myself with some log piles. I was chopping big tree branches into log-shaped lumps with a chainsaw. And I hate chainsaws. I hate the noise of them and the danger and the faff that comes with running chainsaws, but my God, are they good at what they do. You can't help but respect the way they chew up bits of wood. The key thing, of course, is keeping them sharp. So I went into the shed frequently with a little chainsaw sharpening tool and put the bar of the chainsaw in the clamp and did the whiz over the individual teeth, which is quite fun and quite exciting for me because I'm not a mechanically minded gardener. If anyone has worked in big gardens, they'll know that often there is a mechanically minded guy on the gardening staff. And he is a gardener. His job title says gardener. He's paid the same as the other gardeners. But really, he's a mechanic, and a brilliant one. And he will be in charge of lawn mowers and fly belts and fixing the scarifier and fiddling around in the workshop. And I've never ever been able to do that kind of thing. I have no idea really about engines. But I can just about do a chainsaw. I can tension the blade. I can give it oil in its various little hungry oil mouths that it has gaping open. And so that was quite exciting. It's quite a manly feeling, sharpening a chainsaw and then striding out to the log pile and laying waste and creating sawdust all over the place. After this piece of destruction, I finished the afternoon with a little bit of wandering and tidying and a general inspection of how things are going. It's so important to look at your garden this time of year because everything is rushing so quickly. The lilies are coming out. Actually, the weekend, I went for a walk in one of my local parks down in southeast London and saw lilies in bud. Admittedly, they were in a walled garden, but isn't it amazingly early? Anyway, in my garden at work, they are up and out of the ground already, and there is just a general rush upwards, as if gravity has been ignored by all things green, and they have been allowed to float up off the earth a couple of inches a day in some cases. I finished the day by unwrapping the tree ferns. It was time to take away the straw and fleece that had protected their crowns over the past few months. I don't think we got more than 4 or 5 days where they really needed it. Some of those very snowy and icy days. And now they are free. The fronds underneath, the little knuckles, the monkey's tails that are lurking below that straw seem fresh and hard and ready to uncurl, which gives me great pleasure. It looks like they've all come through the winter, which could not have been said about last winter. The straw went onto the compost heap and the fleece went down into one of the sheds because we might need to pull it out. If there's a forecast of a very sudden and sharp cold snap, we'll just stuff a little bit of fleece down into the middle of those ferns. I've been feeling very gung-ho altogether, actually. On Friday, I forgot about this. I also planted out some of the cuttings I took in the autumn. Planted out the melianthus, which is probably reckless in the extreme because the melianthus that grows properly in the garden, I cut down because I think melianthus looks pretty awful left over winter. And the leaves are only just starting to shoot from the ground. And then these great, vulnerable, weak, herbaceous, floppy, flappy cutting things knocking around, probably just waiting to get taken out and to taunt me for my hubris. I also planted out a load of Xanthodeschia aethiopica, that aroid, the arum lily with the white flowers, that had been started in the greenhouse as well, so it's probably very vulnerable as well. But it's exciting to have these gambles, these dangers. Some people might be addicted to casinos or whippet racing. I am addicted to chancing my arm against the British weather. And I will, of course, keep you updated if all of these things turn into sloppy brown frost mush. But they haven't this week, and for that we can go home happy. Now let's see if there are any recommendations for you this week. My recommendation this week is to go and look at the National Trust's job pages. I'm not suggesting that anyone who listens to this goes and works for the National Trust, although, of course, they are more than welcome to. But there is something quite interesting there. They're advertising for a new head gardener at Sissinghurst. And Sissinghurst is regarded as the jewel in the crown of the National Trust when it comes to gardens, rightly or wrongly. And they have approached this quest to find a new head gardener to replace Troy Scott-Smith in quite an interesting way. They've done a little video campaign searching for their applicant. It feels like they almost wanted to turn this into a publicity drive for the gardens and the gardeners themselves, and they kind of chickened out halfway through. But there's still a very interesting result, because you can see a little 5-minute film with interviews with Troy Scott-Smith and with other head gardeners, with the previous 3 gardeners who between them go right back to 1959. They allude to the pressure of the role. There's no other garden that brings such scrutiny, I think, for the gardener. Everyone has an idea of what Sissinghurst should be. And as various commentators in this little video make reference to, there is no way it should be. No one knows how it ought to be. Gardens are developing things. It had never reached a point where it was complete and finished. But there are people who have such strong ideas of what Sissinghurst should be. And these people might have travelled. They might have travelled from across the world. They might have crossed continents to see the White Garden. And if you decided that you're bored of the White Garden and got rid of it, there's going to be hell to pay. I think it would be a really good campaign to raise the profile of horticulture if they could somehow get it out to a wider public, the advertising for the new head gardener, and have a demonstration of what the role involves, just how outrageously complex it is, the responsibilities, the action points, and the creativity that comes with it. There might be some sort of trickle-down effect to us less elevated head gardeners and under gardeners and sub gardeners and volunteers across the industries. Also, the job seems to pay fairly well. So it's paying 40k and you get to live in Sissinghurst, which in UK horticultural wages terms is as much as you are really going to earn, particularly if you're in gardens open to the public. If you want to see the videos they've produced, you can go to the National Trust's Instagram page, their jobs Instagram page, which is NT Jobs on their site, and there's 12 little videos they put up there. Or you can go to their YouTube channel, which is NT Jobs on YouTube, and there you can watch the Sissinghurst video and the interviews with the various head gardeners. I recommend the Instagram page because you get more in-depth and longer commentaries, and you get the very, very important advice from one of the head gardeners that you need to, a couple of times a week, when everyone is cleared out, pour yourself a nice drink and wander the garden and take pleasure in it and see it not as a place of work, not as a to-do list, but as a vehicle for joy. That's how the public need to see it. And if you can do that with drink and a wander, then I'm all in favour of it. No other recommendations this week, I am afraid. So I will just say goodbye to you. Thank you very much for listening. It has been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy other things more, though. I hope you get out and do some gardening, or get to even just stare out of the window, look at some plants, go and rub your hand on some wild garlic. It's just coming out in the lanes out there. I shall certainly be doing some of that myself. So until next week, I say have a wonderful week, whether you are gardening or not. Thank you very much, and goodbye.